This is the Ultrarunning History Podcast. But the most significant run, which was mostly unnoticed at the time, was performed by Gordy Ainsleigh in the rugged, hot mountains in California. Previous to that, many sub-24-hour 100-mile solo runs had been accomplished every year on roads, tracks, and trails. But Gordy's run did not get much attention until several years later, when it became an icon for running 100 miles in the mountains, the symbol for Western States 100, founded in 1977. His run must be mentioned, examined, and put into its proper historic context, peeling away the decades of marketing hype and myths that grew out of it. The next year, 1972, Ainsleigh rode Rebel again and witnessed the soldiers from Fort Riley, Kansas, who became the first to cover the Western States Trail on foot during the event. See episode 65. He and Rebel finished in 19 hours 26 minutes, nearly 7 hours behind the winner. The soldiers finished during that same hour before sunrise. Ainsleigh felt confident that he could run Western States without a horse. His fellow endurance riders had been encouraging him to give it a try. He wanted to cover it much faster than the soldiers did 2 years earlier and beat the 24-hour cutoff time established for the riders and horses. Many were skeptical that he could pull it off. Ainsleigh proved his doubters wrong and indeed finished. Always a showman, he entered the stadium, did a somersault before the finish line, and crossed with a time of 23 hours, 42 minutes. See episode 16 for details of his historic run. Ainsleigh became the 8th person to cover the course on foot, but the first to break 24 hours. His accomplishment didn't get much attention at the time, just a paragraph or two in a couple newspapers, and a short mention by Paul Harvey on his radio show.
Paul Harvey? Good day.
2 years earlier, the soldiers had received multiple full pages of photos and stories in the newspaper about their historic first finish. But Ainsleigh's fame would arrive several years later with some crafty marketing. In later years, others would try to run the course too, but it wasn't until 1977 that Wendell Roby, president of the Western States Trail Foundation, finally decided to organize the Western States Endurance Run. Ainsleigh was not the founder of the Western States Endurance Run. Wendell Roby was. Ainsleigh was along for the ride. For 1977 and 1978, the marketing effort for Western States got to work to promote the new race. The board strategically decided to, quote, prop up Ainsleigh's story of his run and make him into the icon of the emerging race. Ainsleigh loved the attention. They also purposely decided to bury the 1972 story of the soldiers. Ainsleigh was proclaimed in marketing material and news stories as the first to cover the 100-mile course on foot. But there was another problem that later surfaced. The course was actually only 89 miles, far off any acceptable distance for a 100-miler.
The road's not long enough for me. La, 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 la.
Ainsleigh and the early runners did not come close to running 100 miles in 24 hours. More miles were added in 1980 to make it 93.5 miles. It was not until 1985 that the course was extended to 100 miles. The Western States origin story continued to be enhanced by Ainsleigh and the 1978 race organizers, who made overreaching historic claims. These people were horse endurance riders, not ultrarunners. They were focused on California, knew nothing about the history of ultrarunning and what was going on with 100-milers across the world. They did not know about the nearly 1,000 athletes who had already covered 100 miles on foot in less than 24 hours on tracks, roads, and trails before Ainsleigh's run. 1,000. Yes, historic accuracy was not their focus. Marketing was.
There's a quote usually attributed to the writer Mark Twain that goes, "A lie can travel halfway around the world while the truth is putting on its shoes."
The 1978 Western States Board of Governors thought that their race was the first 100-miler and started to make that false claim. The focus of these organizers was to fulfill Wendell Roby's dream to make Auburn, California, quote, the endurance capital of the world.
Auburn holds the undisputed and internationally acclaimed title of Endurance Capital of the World.
Despite their overreaching claims, their efforts were amazing and would bring Western States 100 into the world spotlight. Dozens of 100-milers would pattern their races after Western States. The revisionist 100-mile ultrarunning history claims would continue to grow through the years. Ainsleigh, who was only a mid-pack runner, who never organized any race, was proclaimed by some as being, quote, the godfather of the sport, ignoring the true modern-era contributions by Ted Corbett in New York. Ainsleigh was also called, quote, the man who invented trail ultrarunning, a claim that Ainsleigh still embraces on his personal website and on podcasts.
Hey, Gordy, you know, when we go out and tell our friends we're going to go enter this 100-mile race, when you did it, nobody had ever done it before. What were you thinking?
Hopefully the preceding 12 parts of the 100-mile history has preserved the true rich history of the 100-mile sport that early Western States marketing ignored, or more likely, just did not know about.